And first, let me tell you about myself and what we're going to do today. So my name is Chris Berg. I'm CEO and founder of DataKitchen. And I've been doing sort of the data and analytic business now almost 20 years. And one of the things that we've gained over those years and kind of doing every role in data and building this company that focuses on data ops and data quality and observability, we're going to share today. But before we start, let me take care of some bookkeeping. So it's interesting, there's 53 companies or countries represented today from all over the world and every continent. I will share the slides and the recording and the transcription. So we'll put up a little web page and share that with you. So there's a chat window that's actually, if you look in the lower right-hand corner, you can see it. And so that will, if you have any questions, put it there. I will endeavor to answer them as I can, but I'll also go and look back at the questions at the end. And so we've targeted about 45 minutes and generally with questions, and it should be no more than an hour. So thank you very much for attending today, and let me start. So what are we going to do today? So we're going to talk about the sort of why and the what and the when and the how. And so why a data quality dashboard? And sort of what are the 6 types of data quality dashboards? And when do you use them, and how do you create them? And then we'll do an example demo with our open source software of each of the types of dashboards, and then we'll have a conclusion. So we have a point of view on data quality improvement that's come, from experience. It came from some market research we did last year. And let me go through that, because that underlies everything that we're going to say today. And honestly, if you don't agree with it, you should probably leave the call now. So I think data quality improvement starts with a single empowered individual who's interested in driving data quality change. And they do that via influence. Most people who want to make change to data quality, they can't tell people to do it. They only have influence on doing it. And second, they need to focus on a specific end customer. So it's not general, vague data quality. It's like, who's going to feel the impact from this? And third, they need to start small and iterate quickly using data ops principles. And we've been talking about data ops for better than a decade. And so we've got books and training that we can share later. And then giving specific and concrete remediation actions. And that's something that's going to be a theme through this. A score is not enough. It has to be a score backed by, here, you should fix this. This column, this table, this is exactly what's wrong. And then the whole point of what we're here today is quality needs to be measured in some way. Why? Because that is good in and of itself, like we're all data and analytic people, but it's also good because as a single empowered individual, I have to prove that I have value. And that line that goes up and to the right is really important. And so showing that your quality is improving actually helps extend your influence, helps show that you're making a difference. And so that's really what we're going to talk today is kind of sort of how do you set up a measurement system? And it's enabled by free open source technology. So we've written a lot about this over the past 6 months, year on data quality improvement. We've got webinars, we've got white papers. I'll share this at the end. We've got a certification. We've even got a video series with Uncle Chip that's really fun to watch. And so those will be shared, but they're also linkable from this. And so every presentation about data quality has this slide, why data quality? And I guess because you're here, you believe in it, but as you know, where data quality can derail operations and screw stuff up and erode trust with your customers. And our view is that data quality has this ecological term, the tragedy of the commons. That is, everyone's grazing on the data quality field, but it's been cut down to nothing because no one's investing in making that shared common field good grazing grass for us to get data off of. And then data quality leadership itself, as I said before, it's an influence challenge. It's not about power. It's not about telling people what to do. And how do you get someone to take action? And so that's really our perspective. And so why a dashboard? Well, they're essential, right? They provide they take something that's invisible, like the health of your data, and make it visible. And well done ones enable targeted action improvements. And sometimes dashboards are called reports or scorecards or assessments. They have different terms. And really, not all, just because you have a dashboard, it's not great. They're not all created equal. It's got to be aligned with what people care about, what the data landscape is, what their challenge is. And then, while you're here, there's just a bunch of distinct types of data quality dashboards, each serving a unique role. And so you want to be able to sort of maximize your impact, streamline your efforts, and really drive that change in data quality. So that's all about why you should do a dashboard. So what are the 6 types of data quality dashboards? And let's go through them. And so the first one is called dimension or data quality dimension focused dashboards. The next one are critical data elements. And so I'll use the term CDEs. But that really means specific elements that the corporation has found valuable. The last one focuses not on a person, but on a goal. And maybe it's, there's always a person responsible for a goal in the organization. The fourth one doesn't, again, it doesn't focus necessarily on a person, but perhaps it does. Somebody owns a data source, and how good are your sources? We've worked with companies who have 100 different data sources that come into their warehouse and infrastructure. And then how do you actually focus on the person who receives the value, a data consumer? And then lastly, one that's kind of not a dashboard in any sense, but it's ticket-driven workflow as a way to judge change in data quality. And so what I'm going to do in this, I have sort of 4 slides on each. What I'm going to do is have one slide that's an overview, one slide that talks about benefits. I'll have a quote, and then I will actually talk about some challenges in this. So data quality dimensions, everyone knows what they are. There are ways to categorize what is data quality. And so people have written a ton about it. And there's this sort of fundamental things of data quality. Is it complete? Is it accurate? Is it timeliness? And they're kind of philosophical in some ways, like what does complete mean? What does unique mean? I'm not going to talk very much about that at all today. I think of them as just a grouping. They're grouping of the areas of concerns, and they do support targeted interventions based on those sort of dimension-specific insights. So what is it? Well, sometimes you want to have a very broad brush to cover lots of data elements, like how's all our data doing? And it's a relatively standard grouping of data quality issues and categories. It does facilitate sort of consistent and repeatable evaluation across data sets. And it's kind of, I think, like high-level data governance reporting. I think it's good. Like if your CDO wants to report on all the data across all the data quality dimensions. And so, however, some people don't believe in them. So we talked to a senior data quality person, 20 years experience, and basically she said the data quality dimensions are crap. They do nothing to motivate people or make improvements to their data. And she also went on that the sort of philosophical things about what is consistency, what is accuracy, kind of derail the process. And so, that's kind of goes in the challenges. They may be too abstract or general. It's really about influence and not science here. That's another theme. It's not about saying exactly what dimensions are. We're not scientists. We're just trying to get people to do stuff. And the sort of context-specific definitions, like, well, why should I improve accuracy? What does it mean to me? And they end up kind of being check in the box, and they're not aligned to stakeholder needs. And they don't really resonate with business people, like 70% consistency, WTF, I'm trying to make my number. I'm trying to, improve quality of manufacturing. What does consistency matter to me? And they can't really connect to what people care about. And the reason I say that is remember that data quality is almost always good enough for the people who own the data. So if I'm putting in data in a transactional database and I run a call center, I'm putting it enough to meet my goals. Maybe the data in that call center is not good enough to do marketing insights, or maybe that data in the call center is not good enough to help decide how we're going to hire or fire people, but it's good enough for me to run the call center. So why do I care about 70% consistency? So that perspective of data owners in some ways, the data is always sort of good enough for their needs. But the tragedy of the commons is not good enough for the corporation's needs, for the whole group needs. So now the next one. The critical data elements. So they're kind of essential, I think, for business who operate in more regulatory environments. So a bank has got to have reporting, and that reporting's got to be based on critical data elements, right? So their financial values, they could be key identifiers like customer IDs, account numbers. And so this could be used to look at credit scores or regulatory compliance or risk modeling. And so they are really effective in regulated industries where CDEs are clearly defined by regulatory bodies or by industry standards. And they can be very powerful tools for risk mitigation or compliance, and they really make it clear about what matters. These external mandates, hey, we've got the risk report to get out, or else we're going to go out of business, or the regulators are going to stop us acquiring another bank. That really can help a company focus. And then everyone understands, well, we've got a compliance report, and a compliance report's made of data, and the data's made of these CDEs, so our CDEs have to be good. It kind of directly connects to people. And so as an example, we talked to a large US bank, and they had sort of amazing results in aligning people on CDEs because they had corporate goals, like they got leadership bought in. And they had to do them, right? Focusing on data quality and reporting affected their bottom line. And it wasn't just fear, it was also, that was like, oh, the regulatory bodies are gonna be honest. They also said there's sort of a benefit to it. If we get our regulations in right, it'll enable us to, I think they said, buy another bank or grow up a banking level or something like that. However, that does have some challenges, right? How do you identify what a CDE is when you don't have a regulator breathing down your neck? What's critical to you may not be critical to someone else. And that sort of alignment is tough sometimes. And then CDEs may change, right? And then in cases where you're doing things like AI or predictive modeling, how do you predefine CDEs where you're actually trying to figure out what the features are in the model, and that's part of the modeling process. And so this iterative approach is sort of necessary to kind of actually define what your CDEs are. And so kind of going on to the next one, which is, so CDEs are great, I think. However, there's another type here that's business goal focused. And this is different. This is sort of, what is the goal of your company? Well, maybe you have Q3 sales metrics and you're trying to have a goal to get 3 new customers, and to get 3 new customers, you're going to have to do a cross-sell campaign, or 30 customers, 300 customers. And to do that, you need good data to be able to actually do that cross-sell campaign to customers. And so aligning data to a goal that a company has to get more customers, to cut costs, however it is, can actually drive change, because then you're saying, well, the data has to be good to do this activity that we're going to do to meet the goal. And so it links it directly to specific organizational objectives. And it actually really highlights how data quality influences those objectives. And it's a challenge, right? The call center may be very good at collecting phone numbers, but you may need email addresses because you're going to do an email campaign to get those cross-sell customers. And so leadership can see these operational and financial implications, right? Because if you're going to do a cross-sell campaign, well, you're going to have to do it to someone and do it by email. So and then it makes data quality more strategic, I think, by tying it to business goals. And so that connection makes data quality relevant to people. It's not just abstraction. It's like, well, we need these data elements to be good because we're trying to make some money. And it shows that data quality can have business impact. It gets executives bought in because it's their bottom line. And then it enables this impact, or some way to judge the ROI of actually doing the work. And then it kind of comes from like this data quality is sort of a technical nerd thing. Oh, it's these people in the background, they're data nags, pat them on the head and go away to the people who really run the business. But it takes that from like a technical nerd concern to like putting it in the business part of the organization. And I think that's actually good. And so here's another quote. So how do you get business to take action? Well, by definition, they're inputting data that meets their data quality needs. with all their data problems, why should they care about data quality when providing data to other teams? Well, the really is that way. You got to motivate them by directly affecting their quarterly business goals. They care about that. And I think that's a really important perspective. And so, the challenge is also, how do you define and maintain alignment between this goal, this cross-sell campaign, these data elements? That's sometimes hard to do. And then business objectives change frequently, right? And so you may get halfway through and then, well, the quarter's over. And then, there's some complexity in maintaining this alignment between goals and data. But I like the business goal challenge because it provides a way to motivate people to make change. Now, this is also one of my favorite ones, right? Is because data comes from a lot of places. It may come from your internal Salesforce system or your internal ERP system, or you may get data from an external supplier, or you may purchase data. And so these are data sources, right? And some of them are good and some of them are bad. And so you can look at it and track metrics on the quality of the data that they're giving you, the amount of error rates. And it helps hold suppliers accountable, because your data people are often taking it on the chin when they decide that suppliers decide, whoops, we're just going to transpose columns, or we're going to change the meaning of a column, or we're going to send you twice as much data that we did before. We're just going to duplicate it twice. All of which I've had the experience of happening. And it kind of fosters accountability. And this graph on the right is something that we call a tornado report, and actually shows the number of errors kind of balanced with the amount of work it took the data team to go, kind of broken out by source here. And so looking at it, saying I've got 5 or 6 sources and this one source is giving me really crappy data, that's very helpful, right? And this accountability is important, because in my years of doing data, your data suppliers kind of don't care that you exist, right? They're like, oh, there's some data people. We just changed the schema on Thursday. Well, they'll figure it out and work the weekend to make it all happen. And so by having this accountability, by having a dashboard that's backed up with specific recommendations, you can then, they know that they're being watched. And I've learned to not shame and blame the providers, but say, hey, look, we found these 4 problems, we fixed them, but here, could you fix it next time? And they actually, the whole thing gets better, and suppliers get better once they know that you're sort of watching them. And if you're kind about it, instead of saying, you jerk, and they tend to get better. And so it also helps your data team not struggle. It helps improve the quality of the reports, et cetera, and just saves a lot of errors. And so here's a case, from a data engineer. Our suppliers don't know that we exist. They don't care about quality. They'll make arbitrary changes to our feed at any time. And it's sort of up to us to deal with it. And so they have no control over the data quality. And I think that's true, right? It's unfortunate that, the contractual relationship doesn't really matter, but it is the world that we live in. And so testing the data and making a data source focused dashboard can help you gain leverage, and can also help, on the other hand, if you're having a team that's having to fix a lot of things, it can also show sort of why your team is struggling. Look, we had 27 issues from our supplier last week. It took us 10 hours to fix them. That's why we didn't get X done. And it also helps you sort of getting at the root cause of where things are. And I think a lot of it is you actually need really good data source tests. You need to check the data as soon as it arrives. And we've talked a lot about testing and where to test. Testing data as soon as it arrives is important, but also testing data as it's integrated with other data sets. As you clean it and put it into an analyst-ready format is also just as important. But the data source one should really be focused just when the data arrives. And lastly, or second to lastly, there's this data consumer one. And so think of this as, in your mind, think of I've got a data scientist, right? And he or she's got this really cool model, and maybe they've worked out all the features that go with it. And they care about this model, and this model may be tied to a business goal, but they're invested in its success. And how can you make sure that they're successful? Well, you could build a dashboard saying there's these 16 data elements that are very focused and very important for this predictive model. And so let's check the quality of those, and let's monitor that quality over time and see that it's improving, and be able to give recommendations to the data providers to fix them. And so it helps the data consumers then use their influence to be able to make change. And again, this is an influence problem. How do you get other people to drive influence for you is the key, and not be the nag, but say, okay, data scientists, you're the new cool kids in school. We have AI as a goal. Your model is really important to the CEO. We all know that garbage in and garbage out's a problem. So maybe you can help. I'll set up the model for you, but maybe you can help get these corral the cats to actually improve their data quality. And like I said, if you've got an analyst or a data scientist, they get accurate, correct data, they're very happy. And it gives them leverage to do it because they can see it, it's concrete, it's measurable. You can have more than one, right? A high level CEO report, BI report that goes to the exec team that tracks 27 data elements, but maybe you've got a data scientist that tracks a different 13. Those are two good dashboards each for one. And it really, by being able to have these sort of person-focused or consumer-focused dashboards, really helps extend your influence leverage. And here's just a quote: our data scientists are forever complaining about the quality of the data. They have these high-value predictions in production. They're motivated to do it. So if we could focus on what they need, then they give us help in some ways. And that's a consultant told us that. And the challenges are always, no technology can help trying to define exactly what data elements they're needed and what's more important. And then trying to work with a lot of people sometimes to get the data elements that are important to them. And then resource allocations. What if you've got 3 critical reports and 3 critical models and only a certain amount of time in the day? And so there could be a risk of proliferation here when you've got 7 data consumer focused dashboards, all that have a lifetime. So you've got to sort of manage that. And so lastly, there's a dashboard here that's not a dashboard at all. And so this is just using tickets. And so fix these 4 things of data quality. And that's what matters: the number of tickets that are created and the number of tickets that are closed. And in this case, each ticket represents a well-defined issue. So in this case, we're actually not in some ways measuring data quality. But we're making it actionable, trackable, and it really shifts from traditional quality metrics to sort of operational progress. How many tickets were done this week? How many tickets will you do? And that is a very actionable way to think about it. And so by focusing just on here, do this, and saying you've got to, your organization's got to fix 10 data quality tickets this quarter, I think that's a reasonable way to drive behavior change, right? And so, and then it helps you also look for bottlenecks and saying, okay, you're only fixed 7 tickets. Why is that? And you agreed to do 10 tickets. Why haven't you done them? So there is a lot of benefits of thinking in tickets and workflow. And here's one customer. They don't use a dashboard. They just use workflow. There is no data quality dashboard. They just use the Jira ticket UI, right? And it's all about the number of tickets created and fixed during that particular period. And people have specific goals. Data owners have specific goals around tickets. And so I think that's pretty cool, right? The challenges here, you need very direct tests to create the tickets, right? Because if someone is going to have a ticket, you say, oh, the quality of this column sucks. Well, what does that mean? You need to give very well-defined, good tickets. And I think that is backed up here with every one of these. And I'll talk about that in a bit. And then you also risk creating backlogs that are overwhelming. You have 3,000 tickets in backlog. How do I groom them? You need a ticketing system and governance. You need some consistency. And in some ways, it measures work done and not data quality. And maybe that's enough for your team, but it isn't one way that people have been successful. And so those are the 6 really, that I've talked about. And so before I jump into kind of questions, is there any comments or questions I can answer? So Sel had a comment, and I'll talk about that in a bit. it's hard to see beyond all the AI note takers who are putting comments in.
Yeah, that's the only one we got. Sal's comment.
All right, thanks, Gil. So how do you think about this, right? There's these 6 dashboard types, and what's the framework to be able to say which one should I use? And so, you've got 6 hammers, which one do I use to pound the nail in? And so let me talk a little bit about that. So, dimension-focused dashboards, I think, are good when you've got a broad kind of undifferentiated data landscape and you're trying to, look broadly. I think CDE ones are great when you can define CDEs and people will sign up to actually push CDEs. I think business goal ones are great when you can when you have business goals and you can directly connect those to data elements and actions to meet those business goals. I think data source ones are important, especially when you have unruly data sources. Maybe you don't need them for, in my experience, data sources are kind of like, crappy data sources are kind of like wild horses. They need to be tamed. And so you can tame them through tests. You can tame them through test bed, feeding on dashboards. But once they're tamed, they're okay. So you don't, maybe you need them in your back pocket, but you should always, so when you've got an unruly data source, that could be helpful. Data consumer ones are when you have, everyone's got data consumers of data. So that's kind of if you've got a vocal data consumer. And ticket-driven workflows, I'm going to talk a little bit about this because I think in some ways, a data quality dashboard and a ticketing system are 2 sides of the same thing. And so I'll talk a little bit about that. So let's go on to the next one. So,
Chris, we got a question from Donna Russell on tickets.
Oh yeah, so the problem with tickets, how to identify a ticket as a root cause as data quality. So let me, I'm going to answer that in a second. There's sort of the next slide talks about it. But in general, the way that we think of a data quality dashboard is it's rooted in actions, and the scores that make up a data quality are rooted in data quality tests. And so that's us. But let me finish this thought, and then I'll jump to Donna's question. So, the key insight here is every dashboard type kind of touches the elephant in a different way. It addresses a different stakeholder needs and organizational perspectives. And so you really need to ask, who is the customer for my data, right? Because let me find the customer that's going to be able to drive influence. And, you could even say that for source dashboards, because your customer is the data engineer who's going to suffer the consequences. And so I'm a believer in multi-dashboard strategies. You should have a mix of data consumer or CDE or data source. There's not a one size fit all here. That's what I believe is like these types of dashboards are different techniques that you can use to drive influence, to show that you're doing well by tracking the improvement over time, and to drive improvement of data quality. So what are some heuristics, right? I think use dimensions ones for foundational monitoring across all data. Think of it as your base layer. It's your CDO wants to say, how great am I doing overall? And use CDEs when it's pretty clear to the organization what CDEs are, when it's regulatory or high impact data. Use business goals when it's pretty clear that you can translate them into ROI or translate the business goals into data sets. And use the source or consumer or ticket driven when it's targeted to specific cases. And so we're 12:30. Actually, there's a bunch of great questions. So I'm just going to go through in order to have the next 15 minutes. There's some good questions I'll answer at the end. So I want to get to this because that answers Donna's question. So data quality dashboards must be actionable. So the basis of a dashboard has to be concrete actions. It has to be test results or in our another way, data hygiene test results. So it has to say these actions make up a dashboard. So they have to be built from discrete, concrete actions. And in some ways, data quality tests are the foundation of your data quality score, not some fuzzy math based on profiling, but like you should be able to, another way to say it is you should be able to click through your dashboard to say, here's a score and here's all the actions from it. And so that way is the only way that you can get people to do things, I think, is because if you're giving them a score and there's no action, who cares, right? It's like, what do I have to do? And that action itself has to be clear. I've worked in the software industry for quite a while, and every time I have to find a bug in our software, I have to write a ticket because the software engineer says, well, how can I recreate this? And so you have to not only make it concrete, but you have to make it actionable. That is, you have to describe exactly what the problem is. And, you know, since the foundation are test results, there's kind of this equivalence principle, right? That data quality test results or workflow tickets and a dashboard are kind of the same. Whether you could express a dashboard as a series of tickets and workflow, or you could express it as, you know, a numeric sum. And so you must be able to, you know, a score could be able to convert into workflow tickets, and workflow tickets should be able to be converted into a score. And so that means that every data quality ticket must be supported by a test. And so this is our perspective on it, because it's an influence challenge. It's tragedy of the commons. The only way you're going to get influence is to say, do this discreetly and fix this. So if you base your data quality in tests and results and have the scores calculated from the test results, you're going to get that action. And so I think that sort of answers, hopefully it answers Donna's question, because that equivalence principle is like, is there. That's how you identify where the source is, because the ticket is on a particular table in a particular column. That's the root cause. So let's go on to the next slide. And I guess we kind of believe that assessing data quality or building dashboards, because of our background in agile methods and data ops and lean, that don't spend months building a data quality dashboard. Don't analyze and plan and design and build. And so if you get an assessment or a dashboard here at the end, it could take months, a traditional sort of waterfall way to do it. We actually believe it's much better to iterate quickly, do small assessments with less data elements over time. And what that means is that this sort of, we've applied our background in agile and lean methods to data quality. And so we've written some papers and talked about this, is sort of get a data quality process working right away. Sort of generate the rules, data quality rules automatically, generate the tests automatically. Start measuring and evaluating data qualities before you're sure that all the standards are right. And then kind of use the measures itself to help and establish the standards where there aren't any. And by cycling quickly, by saying I can, and this is the principle that we built our open source software on, in an hour, I can connect the data sources, profile the data, build a bunch of data quality tests, and then get a score, and then start tweaking. It's so much better than, I think, the exercise in Word documents and PowerPoints, because people will react to things that are real. And so get something real quickly. And what that means is that this scope here of learning and value, what happens in a waterfall thing, all your learning and value is sort of pushed to the very end. And all of this is really about individual empowerment, individuals giving value quickly, and individuals learning. And if you can learn more, you're likely to do things that really matter. And so here, notice I've had some different data sets assessed on the bottom. Data set 1, data set 2, 3, 4, 5. I've assessed 5 data sets in that time. But in a waterfall way, I've only assessed 2. And I think that's, or the worst is, I could have assessed a bunch of data sets that don't matter at all because I've taken so long to do it. And I think that waste is another way that you avoided by this iterative cycle. And so, let's see. So some comments. So Daliwango says, The first three types feel quite similar. Business goals tend to drive reporting, which is usually how CDIs are identified. DQ dimensions help us define measurability for data quality, but still given by the business scores. Right, yeah, I think that's certainly true. Like, there is kind of a philosophical aspect of how you say something's a business goal versus a CDE, because your CDE is a business goal. But in cases where companies haven't defined CDEs, attaching something to a business goal. And these words, source focused, business goal focused, customer focused, they're just, I think, themes to help you identify how you should get your dashboard. I guess really you are in trying to get people to help you influence data quality change. You're a lone person out there, and how do you get a band of people together to help you? And that's really, I think, the goal here in each type of dashboard is a method to help get a team together to do data quality. And by focusing on what that team needs, a specific customer, a specific business goal, a specific regulatory report. So let's keep going. So what I'm going to do is just demonstrate our open source software here. And to do that, I'm going to switch and share this screen. And so this is something that our open source software, it's Apache 2.0. You can download this whole application here. Again, our philosophy is it's a fully functioning software, contains everything that you see today, allows you to score and build as many dashboards as you want against as many database connections. And so let's talk about this. So what I've done in the tool is actually built these dashboards. I have a business goal dashboard here in the upper right. I have a CDE dashboard. I have a data consumer dashboard. I have a data quality dimension dashboard and a data source dashboard. And so let me talk a little bit about that by going in. And so let's first look at this business goal focused dashboard. And so I drill into it, and I can see I've got some tables, but I've also got some columns. And so here's what our belief is that data quality needs to be made up of discrete issues, and these things are driving the score. So like if I look at this, the price here, the sale price, and I drill into this, I can see, okay, what's the sales price? I can kind of look at my profiling for this and see the distribution. And then, well, what's happened here? So I've got a warning on this. So let me drill into that to see what happens. And so here I've got the sale price, and the distribution has changed. So it's actually kind of gone up. So people are giving sort of more discounts. I can look at the source data here to see what happens. And so something's changed here that I don't really know. And this could be an indicator that some people are giving more discounts, or an indication that there's a statistically significant shift in the percentage of unique values versus baseline. And so that something's funny in the data. And so that means we should investigate. Perhaps it is right, and we can disposition it saying it is an issue or it's not an issue up here in the upper right, but it's a way for us to kind of drill into the data and look at it. And this kind of, let me go back and share this tab, being able to kind of go in, identify specific issues, and then see what happens here. And so I can look at this from a CDE standpoint. And so the way that this also works is if I drill into it, if we identify where things are specific columns that are CDEs, each one of these, like customer ID, first name, gender, income level, last name, they've been identified as CDEs. And so here they're all pretty good. They don't have any sort of hygiene issues or data quality test failures. Let's go back and look at some of the other dashboards. And here we have sort of a typical data quality one, if I drill into that. And so again, each one of these have specific columns. We can look at these for the columns. We can actually look at them by the data quality dimensions and see how they contribute. And then we can kind of drill into each one as before. And here we have a score trend. It's not very illuminating in this example, but this is, the score trend increasing is kind of, it shows the effect of a data quality person, because as what you want is that upper and to the right improvement. because that's I'm as a data quality person, I'm awesome. I've made an effect and it's improved over time. And what that means is either someone's fixed the source data, or you've gone in and looked at these issues and said, well, there's a whole bunch of issues here that go into data quality dimensions. Should I disposition these in a different way? Does the product ID or the total amount or the price, is that really relevant? And so I think that's an answer here that you have to kind of go through and do this. But there's sort of two ways to fix the score. One is to fix your data, and the other one is to fix your tests acting upon the data or your checks. And that's where this iteration can come through. You can actually work on both at the same time. And I think that's having data quality checks means managing them. And our system automatically builds a whole bunch of data quality checks. There's several dozen it just scans and creates automatically, but it also, you can build custom tests and change them yourself. And so kind of going back to this quality dashboard, we can see we've got one by data source. And so what we've done here is we also have a data catalog. And in this, just sort of where this comes from, we have metadata that's defined by different data sources. And so we can kind of go in and say, okay, here's by suppliers. We can look at this and we can say, okay, this data product is supplier data. Everything in here comes from supplier data. So this has all been set with some metadata that describes the data in this column as coming from supplier data. And then we use that as a filter here into the quality dashboard. So what we go in and our data source dashboard, if I want to go in this and edit it, I can go in and say, okay, it's for this table group, which is our way of identifying what database you talk to, and what source system here. This happens to be product master, and I can change this, configure it however much I want, and I can show it in different ways. I could actually say I want to group this by source system, etc. So it's a very flexible way to create and make a dashboard. So I'm going to stop sharing this and go back to the presentation. And then we'll answer some questions. So just to conclude, so what are we trying to do here? Basically, we're trying to fight data quality denial. Like a lot of people, they kind of, data quality issues have for a long time, they've just gone unaddressed. And I think partly it's because people don't have tools to do this, and that's what we've tried to do with our tools, give an individual some superpowers through some open source software. But on the other hand, there's these cultural issues, right? And denial is cultural, right? We don't have, everything works. I'm not getting yelled at, so things are great. But that's a cultural thing, not necessarily careless. And there's a lot of superficial stuff that aren't grounded in action, and a lot of tools out there that just give you a score and like, so what? I got a score. What exactly should I be doing here? And so we believe that that's really important, to be grounded in specific actions and share those actions and the details of those actions. And so we have what's called an issue report and ways to get at the details in the UI. And I think these, when you see workarounds and sometimes when you don't see any complaints, they're actually dangerous signs that people have just given up, or they put a data quality system on top of your data and they're not telling you. And so someone else is fixing your problem. And so I think this idea of dashboards and observability can break the cycle, right? By making problems visible and traceable and actionable. And I think, again, that's only as if they link the metrics to real actions that people should take. And to kind of reiterate our final belief here is that basically, if you're a data quality leader, how do I deal with all this data and how do I influence change? That's really the core problem. And our belief is that you get going quickly, you focus on a specific customer, you pick the right type of dashboard, you iterate, you improve, you get influence, you give concrete action, and you start with, maybe you don't use our open source, maybe you do, but it's a great place to start. And we've got a whole bunch of resources for you. There's a link here to install TestGen. If you move on from TestGen, we have, and you want to start not looking at data, but also looking at your ETL and BI tools, we have an observability tool that does that. And we have a data quality, 7-hour data quality certification and another 3-hour certification on data ops, and of course, several books. So I want to thank you for that. I hope this was valuable for you. We had a lot of people here today. And let me go back, and I'm going to stop sharing here, and I'm going to look at the questions. And Gil, is there any particular questions I should answer?
You know, there's a lot of good questions in there. You can maybe just go up from the bottom, might be the easiest way.
Okay. So what are the terms of the software? So the software itself is what's called Apache 2 open source. That means basically you can do whatever you want with it. There's some terms. And so how we make money is we focus on giving everyone a full-featured, an individual, a full-featured software. So the UI, all the data quality rules, the AI that generates all those rules, the profiling engine is all there. But we limit it by one user login and by one database connection. And if you want more users and more database connections, it's $100 US per month. So that's our business model. Sel's got a question. Each dashboard type are different in terms of which data points they have. So the main difference in the inventory of the attributes, not the technique or the dashboard. I think so. I mean, I think of the world as you've got a bunch of tables with columns, and then on top of that, you've got a bunch of data quality rules that have found problems in the columns. And so what we're in the process of is aggregating those rules, or specifically the results of those rules running, into a dashboard. And so the question is not so much what's the cool graphic design of the dashboard, but how you're taking those columns and their tests and putting it together to make action in the organization. And so I guess Sella's question, how could you link a data quality dashboard to a trust or maturity model that gives us easier context to business for understanding and assurance? You know, I think in some ways, isn't a data quality dashboard a trust score? In my mind, isn't the result of a score on a dashboard and the aggregate score on that dashboard that's a proxy for trust? Or and isn't the improvement of those a maturity model? Those
you're supposed to write. Can you get your pencil?
So and so I guess in my mind, a maturity model on data quality has got a lot more things than just a score, right? There's the programs and the process and the understanding. And so a score is kind of a point on a maturity model. And so there's a whole program that has to be put in place to do data quality. And you know, our technology can help that and be a sort of a point on a maturity model. Or a trust score that fits into a maturity model, but it doesn't replace a maturity model. There's other aspects and processes that people need to use. And okay, so there's a big question here. How can dashboards be totally actionable unless someone performs data quality assessment or root cause analysis based on profiling results to figure out various actions taken up for improving data quality? Do you think that statistical column profiling insights, counts, range, distribution, doesn't have a place in these 6 types? No, I guess I think every dashboard, like I said, has to be backed up by a series of data quality tests and their test results when applied to the columns. And our tool profiles the data, learns the data, and automatically generates data quality tests, in addition to giving you the option to do manual ones. Our whole goal in tools sort of get you 70% of the way there. So you have a broad range of data quality tests, and then make it easy to tweak them and easy to add custom tests. And so what makes action is the test results and getting people to fix them. And there's 2 sets of things to do that with the test results. One is you can tweak the tests, say this doesn't matter, or improve it, or you can deliver the test results in an actionable format to another person to fix. And so that's our sort of view on it. Is action comes, and that's why we built the product along the ideas that you suggested. So Kunal has got a question. What kind of dashboard will be the best suited when they are implementing data quality for the first time and have done only statistical profiling based on same created business rules? Well, I think I put it in another way. How are you going to get people to listen to you? And who can you put on your side in the organization who's going to help get stuff done? Because I don't think, as an engineer, I've spent a lot of time in my career kind of focused on the technical and built these big technical artifacts. And then they haven't done anything in the world. In order to do stuff in the world, you need to solve things extrovertedly. You need to get people on your side. So who are you going to get on your side, and what's going to cause them to be on your side? Is it business goals? Is it their report that they're generating? Is it some CDEs? Is it that they run a data engineering team and they want their data source? How are you going to get people lined up with you, and what's the leverage to do it? And then how are you going to make that actionable through tests? That's the way I think about it. And Billy has a question I'm not sure I can answer. He says, in case we have a lot of reconciliation between two systems, which one will you recommend? Verifying customer numbers from two systems? Such a context-dependent case. When you've got two systems, I mean, is it the case where you're trying to move data from one system to another, you're doing data migration, or you've got the same data in two systems, and then how you reconcile it? I think it sort of depends on which case. And then, like, if you've got two systems with the same numbers, which one wins? That's a really good question. And I think the best case of answers is to have a test that you'll run against both systems that sort of contains what should the numbers be. But I can't answer it because it has to also do if you've got two systems that have customer records and which name wins. That's a sort of a question on business context that is sort of hard to answer. From a technical standpoint, it has to do more with the data quality program that you put in place. So I think that's it. I don't see any more. Gil, do you see any more questions?
Yeah, there's one coming at the end. What do you do if your data is sitting in S3 and it's not in a warehouse?
Well, don't use our tool because we need a database to run our stuff. So I think our tool doesn't copy data; it injects data into a database. So there are ways that you can. A lot of databases now have the ability to read directly from S3 and create sort of ephemeral tables. And so I know Redshift, I know Snowflake, I know a bunch of databases has that. So for our tool, you need to have a query execution engine to run it. And so a lot of databases, you basically reflect the S3 bucket into a table in a database, and then you profile it and run it. And that's the way I would work. We're not a believer that you should have a definite separate data warehouse that you copy all the data into just to do data quality. That tends to be more of an expense. But I know other solutions do it, so it could be debatable.
Yeah, and just questions about our tool. It works on structured SQL data. So if it's in a file or OneDrive, etc., it's not accessible. So it needs to be in one of the supporting databases or supported databases, or loaded into a supported database and run it from there. And I think there's a lot of concern about getting copies of the slides. So
yeah. So what I'll do is I'll put up a little web page. It'll have the slides. It'll have the recording. And here, I'll if you want them, I'll just put I'll put the Google Drive link here in the chat, so you can go. I'll have to give you access, but by the end of the day or by tomorrow, I'll have the website up that'll have all that stuff. But you'll get an email with it.
Yeah, we usually, anybody who wants the slides, anybody who signed up for the webinar, we send an email with a link to the slides and a recording. So I shared a moment ago I'll put it in again. Make sure we have your email, and we'll just send you the slides. There's how you could send us your email.
All right. Well, thank you so much, everyone. I really appreciate the questions and the activities. I hope this was valuable for you. And so there is one more question, Gil. Should I? Okay, I'll try to answer it here while people are leaving. So, so when you say data quality tests, how exactly the tool generates tasks to improve data quality without domain understanding and context? Is it totally rule-based or procedural, etc.? So I guess kind of answering it, it is a way, it uses some algorithms, but not a large language model to build a whole series of data quality tests based on profiling. Our goal here is that we want to get the basics. We want to give you we look at the syntax of the data and not the semantics. So if we generate a whole bunch of tests, we're getting you 50, 60, 70, 80% of the way there. And we give you a UI to, when you have the sort of domain understanding, it gives you the time to do that. And so, you know, we, in our data work, we have some domain specific tests that we use. So we got a whole bunch of tests that we use for pharma companies to check ID numbers that we use, but we don't have a feature yet to kind of share those among other people. But that's our goal, is like get the syntax of the test done, and then give you time then to focus on the domain specific rules. We want to get you 70% of the way there so you can do the 30% that really matter. And that's the domain specific rules. And so that's our view. All right, thanks everybody. Hope you have a great day, and we'll follow up with all the information.
That's great. Thank you, Chris.
Yeah, thank you, Gil. Thanks, bye.